Hello and welcome to another episode of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. This week's guest is Pat Divilly, and Pat is an author, speaker and high performance coach who is passionate about helping people reach new levels of purpose, passion and fulfillment through movement and mindset. Setting up Pat Divilly Fitness in May 2012, Pat's philosophy centred around belief and belonging, instilling increased levels of self-belief in clients whilst making them feel a part of a supportive community of like-minded people. The philosophy resonated, and within a year his clientele had grown to 500 clients, at which point he brought out his first book, 21 Day Jumpstart, and opened his gym. At this point, Pat was one of the first Irish trainers to implement online training for clients around the world. Between 2012 and 2017, over 20,000 clients went through Pat's online training courses. He brought out 2 more books, Naked Paleo and Upgrade Your Life, and organised groups who raised over €250,000 for local charities. In more recent years, Pat has emerged as one of Ireland's top speakers in the area of personal development. He regularly speaks at his own one-day workshops and 3-day retreats, as well as providing trainings in leadership, self-awareness and wellness for some of Ireland's leading corporations. This was a great conversation with Pat. Pat is obviously well known in Ireland and all around the world now, and works with a lot of clients both online and in person at different workshops and events. And this was a really honest conversation as well about lessons he's learned from previous failures and how he, no more than the rest of us, often battles with ego and, that fear, that being afraid to be ourselves as well. So a really interesting conversation where Pat shares loads of information and tips and strategies and just doing what he does best. Pat talks about as well how he gave up one of his childhood passions in order to make money and succeed at life, but now he's reconnected to it and it's like everything is coming full circle. So stay tuned for that. Check out Pat's website as well, patdivilly.com, and his podcast, the Pat Divilly Podcast. Pat Divilly, you're very welcome to the show and thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Really excited to get stuck in. Loads of things I'm sure will come up to be spoken about, but you're an author, speaker and a high performance coach, but you started out in fitness on Silverstrand Beach in Barna. So I'm curious to know kind of what was going on in your life before then and kind of where did that idea come from?
It's funny, I stopped telling my story a couple of years ago in Ireland because I'd done so many talks, I felt like I was a broken record. But as you know...
I'm bringing you back there.
No, it's good. As you know, I was just back from Qatar and I was speaking out in Qatar in the last couple of days, and so the room wouldn't have had any context to my background, and so it was back to telling my story, and it was kind of, it feels like a different lifetime in a way, but ultimately I was always interested in fitness. That was always my passion. Kind of the first thing that ever gave me confidence from my early teens. And finishing school, I didn't really think I'd get the points to study sports science or physiotherapy, anything like that. So I did an arts degree, which was something I really had no interest in. And so college, I was a little bit lost. And again, fitness was the only thing that really kept me grounded and kept me enthused, I suppose. And then after the arts degree, I moved to England and did a master's in science in nutrition. So after that, came out of college 2009, 2010. So the recession was is probably close enough to its worst, and started working in commercial gyms and then went out on my own. I failed with 2 businesses. I say now failed, but obviously learned from 2 businesses with work. And at 24, I found myself working in a pizza shop with a master's in nutrition, which wasn't the ideal place I wanted to be. Yeah. Moved back in with my parents and, as you say, started on Silverstrand Beach. So up to that point, I had worked the kind of traditional gym model of standing next to the client in a commercial gym and counting reps and just doing what everyone else had done. And then when I came home to Galway, after living in Dublin for a while, I took a different approach. So I said I was going to do outdoor fitness classes, and rather than make it about one-to-one clients and push-ups and broccoli and traditional fitness, I wanted to make it about community and about bringing people together. And the 2 words I always use are belief and belonging. Most personal trainers were concerned with how many push-up variations they knew. And my only concern was, can I make someone that thinks they can't do a push-up do a push-up? because knowing isn't the answer. It's kind of application that really leads to change. So that's always been my interest, is, why do we do the things we do, or why do we not do the things we'd like to do? And so, grew a big fitness business, online and offline, did a couple of books on training and nutrition, and then ultimately over time have transitioned into more life and business coaching, I suppose you would call it.
Amazing. And I love, you mentioned 2 failed businesses, and we'll come back to that, because obviously, well, I don't believe either there's no such thing as failure. I've certainly learned my most incredible lessons through the toughest times. But did you ever see how it would evolve? Did you ever think that now this is what you'd be doing more, like you say, the coaching, the speaker, being an author, kind of high performance coaching and mindset work?
It's funny, in one way, it's exactly what I hoped to do and wanted to do, and then in another way, it's so far removed from what I thought I'd ever do. So it's kind of a paradox. But I got into fitness probably when I was 12 or 13. I got my first set of weights, and at the same time I got into personal development. So I've been reading the Tony Robbins and the Jim Rohns and the Zig Ziglars. I've been reading all that stuff since my early teens, and so it's always been something I've been fascinated by. And probably always had in the back of my mind I would like to do that, but public speaking was my biggest fear in life, and so I never thought I'd be able to stand on a stage. Coaching was something that maybe was seen as an American thing, so I didn't think there was a market here for it. So in a way, I knew I'd always liked to do that stuff, but I didn't think it was possible through my fears or a lack of a market. And so it's kind of funny how it's transitioned, but it's just a case of continuing to take steps forward. And when you're stepping into new things, you don't know what the result is going to be, and that's what you have to become comfortable with, is a bit of the unknown. It's very easy, keep doing what you're doing and just stay in a routine. It's difficult to switch up your routine and take chances and stuff like that, but that's what I try to do consistently, and that's kind of what's led me to doing these things now. Yeah.
Totally agree. All the magic happens in the unknown sometimes as well. And like that, you have to get uncomfortable or comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling if you want to progress and take those steps forward. And then from your businesses as well, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned through the so-called failures?
Yeah, so many. I mean, I think the one that I talk about all the time, not just with business, but any goal that we've got, is we tend to compare ourselves to the people we see around us. And the problem there is we've got no context as to where other people are. So when I look at my first fitness business, I had people on pedestals, and I thought, well, this guy's got 100 clients and this girl's got 100 clients, so I want 100 clients. And the biggest mistake I made was I didn't recognize that to have 100 clients, you first have to get one, and you have to work with that person, and you have to develop that. And so ultimately I was trying to jump 10 steps ahead, and I was trying to, to be blunt, I think I was entitled. I think I'd come out of college expecting, because I had a master's, that people should want to flock to me. I thought I knew it all, I would say, probably. And I just didn't recognize the work that is needed to build anything of value. It's the same with anything. If I join the gym and I'm looking at the people around me and I want to have the results that they have, I've just got to let go of my ego, and I've got to do the work that's required. So that was definitely a big lesson. I suppose another lesson was, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And so I always use this example of, most people make fitness about push-ups and broccoli. People are not interested in push-ups and broccoli. They're interested in how you make them feel. And that's why Starbucks is so successful. It's not about coffee, it's about the experience. Any of the most successful businesses in the world are making people feel something. And that was definitely a lesson. I was the personal trainer back in the day that just wanted to get all the certificates for different, modalities. I wanted to be an expert in nutrition and training and flexibility and mobility, and ultimately you have to be an expert in people and marketing, and that's a big part of it. Yeah.
And I love, you mentioned as well, you had a sense of kind of entitlement, and you had to start letting go of your ego. And that's a huge thing. I can, like, for anyone, we all have this ego and characters and identities that we build into and kind of, identify with. So how did you start to let go of your ego? How did you start to kind of disassociate?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's an ongoing thing, but would fail when you fail on a big level. I think you've got nothing to lose at that point. So that was, for me, I tell the story in my TED talk where I say that I moved home on Christmas Eve. My mum's birthday is Christmas Day. I was 24 and couldn't buy a gift for her. And I just felt ashamed because I'd been given everything by my parents. I'd been given all the opportunities I could ask for, and I had failed with a business. So I think coming from that low a place, you don't really, it almost takes the ego away because you've got nothing to lose. I didn't have any self-worth at the time. It was a blank slate. And so that was then. And then, ironically, as I grew the business, there was probably ego developing in the sense of, I use the example of oftentimes when I would go on TV to talk about fitness, rather than being myself, I would think I've got to fit into being the fitness guy. And I'd sort of tailor my message, and I'd go back to being the guy talking about push-ups and broccoli rather than talking about what I was passionate about. So I was afraid to be myself. So there was ego there as well, because I wanted to look good and I wanted to come across well, as opposed to wanting to be myself. So there's so many layers to it, but I think ultimately you've got to recognize that I think most ego comes from comparing yourself to other people. That's always the thing. And if I only compare myself to who I was yesterday, I can develop. I think we've got to develop this beginner's mindset that you're not supposed to get things right straight away, and you're not supposed to have it all figured out, and it's okay to be wrong. And kind of on a similar but different note, I heard this expression about confidence recently, that confidence is not having all the answers, it's just being open to all the questions. And I think that's a good mentality to have, that you don't have to know it all. You just have to be open and willing to learn, to grow, to make mistakes, to develop and put yourself out there. So that's kind of been the journey so far.
Yeah, totally. We're all constantly growing and evolving and have to, like you say, keep moving along. But, when you mentioned there as well that you kind of had no self-worth, or you were afraid to be yourself, that's obviously, a very kind of scary and low point as well for anybody to get to that level as well. So what did you do then to build yourself up again and to kind of pick yourself up again and not stay in that place?
I think it was a case of, for me, one thing I did was I looked to people that were more successful and just tried to get a little bit of time with them, or read their books or watch their videos. And just, something I talk about a lot now is, I use this example. If you think of an athlete who's playing a sport and they make a mistake, you can either watch the wheels come off, where all they can think about is the mistake they've made, and then one little mistake ruins the whole game for them. But you watch an elite level athlete and they make the same mistakes, but they're able to focus on what they're trying to achieve as opposed to the mistake. So that's something I've learned over time. I probably didn't have that mentality at the time, but now, I mess up all the time. I might do talks that don't go down well, or I could do a coaching session where I'm not at my best, and there's always mistakes, but I don't focus on the mistake. I focus on, right, what am I trying to do? Back then, I think I just brought it back to basics, and rather, like I say, than having 100 clients, I just said, I want to get one client and I want to absolutely blow them away. And I want to trust the process, and I don't need this thing to make me €1 million a year. I just need this thing to get me out of the pizza place and get me having enough money to rent a place of my own and move out of my parents' house. So I just brought it back to basics and started from where I was, as opposed to wishing I was somewhere else. Another thing I think I did in retrospect was I accepted where I was. Yeah. So, we have this tendency when we're not happy with our position to fight ourselves and not accept it. And you could be at your lowest point in life, and I think if you can accept that you are where you are, then you can move forward. But if you're ashamed, or you're guilty, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, any of these negative emotions, then you're stuck. So acceptance is key, I think. Yeah. The day that someone accepts that they're massively overweight and unhappy is the day they can take a step forward. The day that someone accepts that the relationship is not what they think it is, the day that someone accepts that, their job is not making them happy, that's when they can move forward. But every other day that we blame or we shame, I think that's the two things that happens. We either blame someone else for our circumstances, or we shame ourselves, and neither thing helps. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help me to say that, I was broke because the economy was bad. It doesn't help me to say I was broke because I'm an idiot. Neither of those things help. Just saying I'm broke because my approach doesn't work, I can try a different approach. That's the key, I think.
Yeah. I love as well, you say that you mess up all the time. It's that humanness element that just comes into everything. And as well, I love as well in the power of sharing and, connection as well. And just being like, we all mess up from time to time, and having that realization as well. And, like you say as well, it's not about comparing ourselves against other people. We all go through different things and that. And I think it's powerful as well, accepting what's on our path, what's in front of us as well, because from them, like you say, you can take step forwards again, you can move again and find solutions. And I suppose that comes into resilience as well, is vital in life to be able to pick ourselves up. So any advice kind of there on how people can start to build resilience maybe in their lives?
You mean in terms of coming back from...
Yeah, kind of bouncing back, or even breaking that pattern, like you mentioned, between blame and shame, kind of steps to break out of the cycle.
Yeah, here's what I would maybe look to. I mean, if I was going to give a strategy or kind of an idea, one of the things I'll do with clients is I've got an exercise called the reality TV show. And the idea is you look at certain areas of your life and you'd say, right, if a reality TV show had followed me around for the last 3 months and I didn't know they were there, what would they have seen in terms of the way that I eat, the way that I move, the way that I interact with my kids, the way that I show up at work, the way that everything, and take all the feelings away from it and just write down the facts. So I might say for the last 3 months, I have trained, but not very intensely. I have eaten so-so. Just get as honest as possible with yourself. That's step one. So that's the acceptance piece. That's getting the facts on paper. Because sometimes, for example, someone will feel frustrated because they'll say, I can't lose weight and I've tried everything. And that terminology is going to make you feel down, because if you've tried everything, you haven't succeeded, then you're going to feel like it's hopeless. But if you were to be honest and say, well, I tried 2 plans and I kind of did them, but I didn't fully follow them. And that might be hard for you to accept because you weren't consistent with something, but it actually gives you a lot of power because you say, well, I did something, it didn't give me results. So I think it comes back to that. I think it comes back to being very honest about what you did or you didn't do, and not blaming or shaming, and just changing your approach. That's important. Another part of resilience, I think, is to train yourself to find the mini wins. So this is something I do with clients all the time, is tracking mini wins every day. And the idea there is again, hypothetical example of January comes, someone goes on a meal plan and they want to eat perfectly all the time. And then they've one little slip up and suddenly they focus on that slip up and the wheels come off and suddenly they've completely gone off plan and they feel bad about themselves. Now, if the person was instead to focus on what were the positives and say, well, I had a slip up, but I've eaten well for the last 7 days, that can quickly change the energy. So we have the tendency to always focus on what we've done wrong as opposed to what we've done right. And if we can change that focus, the simple way of changing the focus is every day write down 3 things you did well, or 3 ways you move forward, no matter how small they are. So that could be as simple as to say, I went to the gym, I had a terrible session, but at least I showed up. That could be the difference between going to the gym again tomorrow or just falling off plan. So I think, accept where you are by getting honest about the facts and letting go of the feelings. Start counting the mini wins. Become a bit more, I would say, take a bit of emotion out of feedback from other people. Or feedback the world gives you, because again, that's acceptance. If someone comes to me and does a seminar and sends me an email afterwards saying, I really didn't enjoy the seminar for all these reasons, it doesn't do me any good to feel bad about myself because of that, or to feel bad about them. I just need to reflect on the facts that they've written, and I can either say, well, I agree with that, or I can disagree, but there's no point in me getting emotional. So I think we have to train ourselves to be a bit more stoic maybe in certain ways. And recognize that feedback from the world or feedback from other people is just that. Because you failing with a business is not final. It's just, feedback that what you're doing is not working. Can you change something? Yeah.
I think a lot of it as well, I think, comes back to, mindset. Like you say, if there's something we want to do, if we want to lose weight or that, we know the strategy. Usually the strategy is always there. We need to whatever, eat less, move more, or whatever. But it's more the psychology, the mindset is the bigger part. And it's the stories and the patterns and kind of the limits that we have ourselves under, and, the stories that we keep ourselves defined by. And that comes to as well, I think, like you said, opinions of other people and taking them on board like really, really personally and on a deep emotional level. And it's again to get that kind of space and detach a little bit. And even, you know, again, it comes back to a level of responsibility for ourselves. We look after our own well-being and emotional states, and it's not hanging in the balance by someone else's opinion or what they did or they didn't do. That's what I believe anyway.
Yeah, well, I spoke, like I say, I was speaking at a conference in Qatar the day before yesterday or yesterday, and I often use health analogies when I'm talking about change because I came from a fitness background, and I think there's a lot of parallels. And I was using examples of, you know, weight loss and stories and everything else. And a guy came up to me after, and I think he was quite agitated by the fact that I had been referencing health throughout. And he was very overweight, and he felt like, I think to some degree, it was a personal attack on him. Now, there was a couple of hundred people in the room, and I hadn't even seen him until after the talk. So that's an example of, you know, it's never about you. There's a couple of hundred people in a room. They're all going to have different perceptions of me. If I let his perception of me dictate how I feel about myself, then I'm in trouble, because there's so many different options. But oftentimes we do that. We think that, you know, someone else's definition must be true. Yeah. Or we can go on the opposite side. And I think there's a lot of black and white thinking in the world now, where people like to jump on one side of things. So someone's either good or bad, they're right or wrong, they're whatever it is. And I think we just need to be a bit less extreme and kind of take what we can from everyone in a positive way, as in, you know, take whatever feedback we can from everyone. Be open to feedback all the time, but you don't have to accept it all the time.
Yeah, totally. I was one of those people. I think I definitely used to be your black or white person, whereas now I'm like, oh my God, no, like there's, never mind 50 shades of grey, there's 50 million shades of grey. And my whole thing now as well, I'm like, no full stops, no conclusions. Like, because I do not know when an event or, you know, something, it doesn't end. And just like you said, it's all about our perceptions, and we only deal with things at our level of perception as it is now. So if I don't change and grow and evolve, you know, and move up, I'm not going to see it differently. So definitely, I can agree with those as well. So then in your own, you know, in coming to this work and, you know, working in this space as well, obviously having that level of responsibility for yourself, you know, you must have got to such a level now. What are some of your routines? Like, do you have a set morning routine, or kind of what is one of your non-negotiable practices or rituals that you need to do daily to kind of get in balance or feel aligned?
Yeah, so the morning routine thing is funny because I know a lot of people, sometimes in seminars people will ask and they expect something intricate, but I don't wake up at a certain time. I wake up whenever I wake up for the most part, and then I drink a litre of water and I have a cold shower, and that's my morning routine. So I make it simple so that I can get it done, because I find if you take on too much and you try to change too much, or you're too, for me at least, if I'm too structured, again, I start the day feeling like a failure if I didn't tick the box on everything. I went for coffee with a friend this morning, and he meditates and he reads a book and he does all these different things. I just can't do that. So a cold shower and a litre of water. And then I meditate every day for at least 10 minutes, and I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu most days. And then with business, I pick 3 things that are a priority. I get those 3 things done as quick as I can or as early as I can. And then I'll either switch off or I'll build upon the momentum depending on how I feel. So that's kind of pretty simple. There's nothing crazy about the way that I structure my day, I think. But, you know, 3 business moves forward every day. It's 100 in a month. Or close enough. Training jiu-jitsu every day and meditating every day gets me out of my head and helps me to just unwind and be very present in those things. And then the morning is just about cold showers, doing something uncomfortable and delaying gratification, and drinking a litre of water is just, you know, your body's 70% water, and if you're dehydrated in the morning, it's a good way to start and energize yourself. So that's kind of nothing too magic or special, but consistency is kind of the key, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I love how simple it is, and like that, you know, it doesn't have to be elaborate or whatever. It's about each of us individually exploring what works for us and our schedules and finding it. But like you say as well, it's consistency. It's the discipline. It's the actually doing it day in, day out. It's like the compound effect. It's the accumulated effect that's when you get the benefit. So it doesn't have to be this big, long, elaborate an hour a day. But if you're even doing 5-10 minutes a day, it's going to build and build and build, and you get the benefit way more in the long run than just doing an hour a day or whatever it is. So I love the simplicity.
Yeah, so look, if someone listening to this wanted to change anything and they said, all right, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes a day and I'm going to drink 2 liters of water a day for the next month, you know, over a month, that's 60 liters of water you've taken in, and that's 5 hours of meditation. And it's very simple. And what happens through that month is you become confident in I think, you know, there's a lot of definitions on confidence, a lot of ways of looking at it, but, you know, self-esteem or confidence, a certain amount of it is trusting yourself. And the way that the way you build trust in yourself is you tell yourself what you're going to do, and then you show up and you do it. But you're not going to show up and do something if it's too intricate or too complicated, or, you know, we talked earlier about feedback. And one of the ways you can get feedback is to say, well, I've tried this 5 times in the past and I never can stay consistent. So maybe I need a different approach. So if someone has tried paleo diet, which I've promoted in the past, if someone has tried that 1,000,000 times and it hasn't worked, there's probably no point going and trying to do it again. You don't have to do it the same way you've always done it. For me, funnily, I grew up lifting weights. I opened my own gym. And when I opened my gym, I lost all interest in the gym. I didn't have any interest in training myself. And I kept trying to force myself to go back to the gym. And I would last a couple of days, or I would kind of half-ass it. And eventually I was like, I'm at a different stage in my life now. I don't really enjoy that anymore. And that's when I found jiu-jitsu. So I think you look at like, what do I want to get from this? So in that example, it was fitness. And I didn't have to be looking at one approach to getting fitness. So if someone's looking to get fit, how can you get, you know, what are the different ways you can get fit? If someone's looking to be more social in their life, you don't have to go on nights out. There might be different ways of doing it. So I think it's worth thinking about, what do I want? And is there different ways of getting there?
Yeah, totally. And that comes back to as well, opening up our minds, opening up our awareness and consciousness levels, you know, ties in perfectly with the podcast as well. But no, that's kind of part of the intention as well, that often when we have such tunnel vision, we cannot see what's right in front of us. So once we begin to open up and kind of, like you say, you know, I want to exercise, but, you know, the gym or the treadmill is not my way. Oh, look at this. There's jiu-jitsu, you know, someone's just come along or mentioned this, and it's like, ooh, what is that? And then go and explore. So yeah, that's great as well, to just create that space. And like you say as well, the meditation, or, you know, even drinking more water, feeling more awake and hydrated, are going to help in all those different ways.
Look, I think most stress, and well, all stress is expectation. It's a story in our head about how things should be. And we've all got, you know, part of the work is just figuring out what are the stories you're telling yourself. So it's making the unconscious conscious. So like most of my 20s was saying that to be fit, you have to go to the gym. And I didn't realize I was telling myself that. But then when I explored other options, I recognized that was the story I was telling myself, and it didn't have to be true. So that's the work, and that's the magic, is finding out what's the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
This is a big thing I've been focused on recently with people, is kind of anytime you're stressed by another individual or stressed by a situation in general, you have to ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself about how it should be? And then it comes back to our acceptance piece of, well, it's not that way, so I need to make a change. For example, I live in Galway and it rains every day pretty much. It's like 300 days a year of rain. You can fight with the fact that it rains, but that's not going to change. Or you can accept that it rains and choose to live somewhere else, or choose to just dance in the rain, you know. But reality is reality, so there's no point me stressing about it. It rains. So
totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny, I even recorded a podcast yesterday as well, and that was one of the things as well, just about acceptance and just recognizing the patterns and asking ourselves the right questions. As Tony Robbins says, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your questions. And it's those self-introspection questions where, because it's the way our brains are programmed as well to look for answers. If we ask different questions, it's stopping the autopilot program that's constantly running. Our brain is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it has to fire new pathways to look for the answers. So what happens? Pat Divilly, he's out and about. Next thing, because life happens, as you say, you're sideswiped, a curveball comes out of nowhere, life hands you, knocks you off balance, sends you some bad news or whatever. What do you do to bring yourself back? Or what are some of the questions you ask yourself in those scenarios? Because again, life is life. It's always going to be up and down. There's always going to be change. So when things show up unexpectedly for you, what's your go-to?
I've always been, well, I say always been, the last couple of years I've been a big fan of Byron Katie's work, so I play around with that quite a bit, and that's the same kind of idea. So a simplified version again is, right, I don't know, I drive into town and my car crashes and it's going to cost me a couple of €1,000 to fix. I'll ask myself, what is the story I'm telling myself about where I should be? And the story might be, well, it's not fair that my car got in a crash and I have to pay money. And then I'll explore that and I'll kind of get a bit more perspective around it. And I'll say, well, I'm lucky to have a car and there's lots of other people that have had a car crash and I'm employed, so I can afford to get it fixed. It's not ideal, but it's not a big deal either. So I'll try to get like that, get as much perspective as I can. As we say, like when you're freaked out or you're stressed, and this is something else, is like when we tell ourselves stories, typically the more stressed we are, the more we'll believe our own stuff. So if I'm losing my mind, I'm going to believe. And I like this thought of this is going on a different subject, but I think it ties in, like your breath will tell you a lot about what's going on in the body. So if I'm breathing shallow into my chest, I'm effectively telling myself that I'm stressed. And so if I can take a couple of deep breaths, that's literally, opening up my mind and put myself in a different part of the brain where I can think creatively. And I kind of describe it to people that, as soon as you get stressed, your brain goes into fight or flight response and it's reactionary and it wants to either get in a fight or it wants to run away from the situation. It wants to just survive. And you can survive or you can thrive. But, if you're at a goal setting workshop and a tiger comes into the room, you don't care about your goals anymore. You just care about surviving. There's no difference between the tiger coming into the room and you having a stressful thought. So you've got to, I think, focus on the breath, come back to the moment, try to get more perspective. Something else I kind of think about is, again, coming back to the ego piece. When something happens to me, I can think that I'm the only person that's ever experienced that thing, or that I'm the only person that's having a bad day. And then I kind of stop and I say, look, everybody has bad days. It's how we react to them that matters. And I try to just stick to the things I've talked about, like get to my jiu-jitsu even when I don't want to train because everything's gone wrong. Do my 10 minutes of meditation, even if my mind's racing throughout the 10 minutes. I try to keep those commitments to myself. I try to widen my perspective with the situation. Last thing I suppose I try to do is, because I've got caught on this recently a few times, where anxiety will rear its head and I'll get overwhelmed and I could spend half a day thinking about how overwhelmed I am, rather than making a list and doing something to stop the overwhelm or to move me through it. I think action is always the antidote to moving forward. And so just coming back to that, like what's one thing I can do to improve my situation, and doing the one thing, I think that's probably how I would sum it up.
Yeah. And even like you mentioned, the breath, again, such a simple thing, but such a powerful tool that we have that we can switch into at any time. And I know it's been vital for me as well at times. And again, it's just to remember to do it in a stressful moment, because the brain as well does not know what is real and what is imagined, whether that tiger is in front of you or whether it's a thought. So again, that's where the magic is, that we need to take responsibility, and by taking that breath and connecting back, we can start to kind of break that habit, and then, like you say, move into action, do something about it, or change your focus and kind of move on from there.
Something I always tell people as well is that, any of these thoughts that we have, or these conversations we're having on podcasts or videos or books, these are all just nice ideas until you go into the world and you've got to put them into action. So I can read 10 books on meditation and on stress management, and then hope that my life is never going to bring stress, but then I don't get a chance to practice those things. So we talk about the breath and we can say, wow, it's great that they're talking about the breath, but that the next time something happens, then it's time to take a few deep breaths and kind of put it into practice.
Yeah.
People have a tendency to bury themselves in personal development information, but then lose their stuff when something comes up in life. So I think it's important, that for every book you read, you're applying something from it, and you've kind of got a toolbox there for when life comes at you.
Yeah, totally. And again, it took me a while to get that one. I was reading them all and I was like, yeah, I know all this, but it is the action. It's putting them into experience that makes the difference. And again, now I am totally fascinated by science as well. And I love, and now that I've read and studied even what is happening biochemically and physiologically within my body when I meditate, or when I take that time out, or when I connect to my breath, or think positive thoughts and feel the emotions. Now there's just a whole other level of experience and excitement for me that I'm like, yes, it's not just woo-woo or airy-fairy. There's actually real things happening inside my body that help fire up the parasympathetic nervous system so the body can relax and begin to recuperate and regenerate, because when we're constant go in that stress mode, it doesn't have time to repair and we can't see the wood for the trees. So that's vital as well. I think it's great doing, like you say, the reading and that, but it is the putting it into action as well that makes the difference.
Yeah, in terms of the staying calm, something I've been talking about a bit recently, and using the analogy is the fire alarm in the house is beneficial when there's a fire, but if it goes every time you use the toaster, then you've got an issue. And for us, the fight or flight response is beneficial. Adrenaline is beneficial. Deadlines can be beneficial, but when we live in that land all the time, it loses its benefit and it just becomes overwhelming. So having simple tools, whether it's meditation, it's journaling, it's getting out in nature, it's just doing something you enjoy every day. It could be as simple as that. It could be catching up with a friend, but prioritizing something every day that gets you out of your mind and into your body and into the present moment. That's how you train, or you ensure that the fire alarm is optimal.
Yeah, that's vital. And again, it comes back to our perceptions. Like you say, stress, adrenaline, they're there. They wouldn't exist if they weren't needed. But when we keep ourselves there is when the problems show up. So I'm interested. What is one of, and just totally changing the subject now as well, because the time is flying by, but what would you say is one of your best personal investments you've ever made? Whether free, whether something you bought, whether, I don't know, a book or a course or whatever. Anything in particular that for you personally?
It's a good question.
You can breathe, take a moment.
I would say when I started my fitness business, I bought a handful of business books and I really applied the stuff in them. But then when I started from scratch and I made €75 from a client and I spent that all on books, and then I applied everything in the books, and then I made maybe €1,000 and I took that €1,000 and then I put that into a mastermind over in the UK. So I went to England for a 3-day course, and I think that just opened my mind up to possibility. So that was a good investment. Again, I didn't learn anything I didn't already know probably, but I was just surrounded by people that were doing a lot better than me, and that just opened my mind to what was possible, because up to that point I believed that you had to be in America to be successful in fitness. And when you get in a room and you're surrounded by people that are doing the very thing that you've told yourself is not possible, it's a very fast way of eliminating the limiting beliefs or the stories that you've got. It's like someone that if they were to say that it's a recession and you can't make money in my town, and then you go to a business networking group where everybody in the room is making money in your town, it opens your eyes pretty quickly. So I would say that was a big investment, or a beneficial investment. And in recent years, trips to the mountains, I've gotten into mountaineering, and that's been a huge investment of taking 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time where your phone is pretty much off and you've got a lot of time for processing and getting honest about your life and changes that need to be made. That's been a great investment of time and money as well.
Fantastic, yeah. And again, it comes back to that whole thing of studying success and personal development. And even you mentioned Jim Rohn as well at the beginning. One of his quotes is something like, "Seldom will our level of success surpass our level of personal development." And that's something I believe in as well. You're currently doing a tour. Well, it's starting this month. Maybe you've already started. Maybe a mindset meditation mastery tour. Now I know it's pretty much sold out all over the country and the UK, but tell us a little bit about it. Or what will you be running it again? Or kind of what are you working on at the moment? What's in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's mostly been corporate work at the moment, so I'm kind of inundated with talks in the UK and Ireland, which has been great. The tour in May is a 2.5-hour evening workshop. So I used to do full 1-day workshops and then 3-day retreats, and really enjoy them, but it can be quite a long day for people coming in. I think Ireland is quite new to the personal development stuff, and so maybe you can do it in other places with the full day. But we said we'd play around with it and try this idea of doing evening workshops. So this is the third tour we've done in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, and they've all been sold out. And it's just a nice kind of, I look at it and I say people go to fitness classes all the time. So this is almost like going to a fitness class for, your emotional and mental fitness. So we talk about, simple things. It's kind of a chance for people to come in for 2.5 hours, press pause, be around like-minded people, leave with a few strategies and a game plan. And I think more than anything, just leave feeling uplifted and enthused about possibility. So this upcoming tour, going to be looking at different forms of meditation in a very practical sense. Not just sitting cross-legged under a tree, but, different types of breath work and journaling and different ways of meditating. And then we're also going to, look at this idea of mastery, which is kind of what we talked about at the start, the idea that there isn't a finish line and you shouldn't want a finish line. I think when people feel stuck in life, they think that everything's going to fall into place at some point and then everything's going to be perfect. And that's kind of a way of tormenting yourself. If you were to say that like the rest of my life is going to be a journey, the rest of my life is going to be a lot of lessons. And if you had a mantra that, I'm a student of life, that can be a huge asset. Like anytime something happens to you, anytime you make a mistake, if I go do a talk for 200 people and I bomb completely and everybody leaves thinking I'm useless, I'm just going to tell myself I'm a student of life and I'm going to learn from that. So that's the plan.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a student of life. Absolutely. Yeah. We're all constantly teachers and students. And I think once we cut ourselves off from being a student, it's game over. You're stagnant. You're going nowhere. So that's brilliant. I love that. And then just to finish up, outside of all your work and these incredible things that you're doing, what else is exciting you at the moment?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is my biggest passion. I'm obsessed, and I think my audience probably don't know what I'm talking about, but it's something I grew up doing as a teenager, and I think a mistake that I made in my 20s was definitely dropping some of the things I enjoyed so that I could try and make money and become known and all this kind of thing. And I think a lot of us do that. I think some of the secrets to happiness are in what we used to do when we were kids or teenagers, and we can lose that because different things. It could be the ego doesn't want to look silly or make mistakes or be a beginner again. And so we don't try new things, or we don't go back to the things we haven't done in a while. I think we forget to prioritize the things we enjoy because we think that we think that we're important if we're working all the time, or we're important if we're busy all the time. And we think almost there's something wrong with us if we're not. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is definitely exciting me at the moment. I've just got an urge to get back to a mountain of some kind soon, just to get the headspace.
Yeah.
And, I love what I do. So sitting for hours every day with Paul that works with me and just talking about ideas and about stories and analogies and trying to come up with ways of basically taking ideas that have helped me in life and put them across in different ways through stories. That's how I tend to teach in seminars and coaching. And so there's kind of there's blurred lines between my work and my life because, everything I do kind of ties into my work in a positive way,
Amazing. I love it. And powerful advice, I think, to end on as well, just connecting back to things we love that bring us joy, and getting out of that busy kind of ideal or something we have to strive for. And you know what? When I was traveling South America and in Brazil, I never once came across jiu-jitsu or capoeira. And I'm so disappointed. I thought they'd be doing it everywhere. And not at all. They all play beach volley or foot volley. So I still don't know what it is either.
You should check it out. You'll enjoy. I think 5-10 years from now, I'll probably own a jiu-jitsu gym and I'll be back to where I started 10 years ago. So it's all going to come
full circle. I love it. Brilliant. Well, Pat, I wish you every success in everything that you're doing. And thank you again so much for joining me.
Thanks a million.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Curiosity in Consciousness podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe and share the podcast on iTunes, Spotify or Stitcher. Also log on to www.karenmaloney.wellbeing.com and click podcasts for the full show notes and links.